Chapter 2. The Fractured Brotherhood. Alone with the pain. The silence was broken by a single cry. Joseph, the son once lost and then found, collapsed onto his father's still form, overcome by a raw, guttural wail that shook the tent walls. He clutched at Israel's linen robes, his face pressed into his father's chest, as if holding on could stop him from slipping away. The others stood motionless. None could share this moment, not with Joseph, who had lost so many years with his father, who had lived as an orphan while the rest of them carried on. One by one, they slipped out, their feet heavy against the woven rugs. Outside, the evening chill had settled in, but no one returned home. They lingered in the silence, watching the tent as though waiting for grief to pass. Joseph needed this time. It was only fair. And as the older brothers gave him space, a different weight settled on the younger sons. The burden of seeing their father undone by sorrow. Near the doorway, Ephraim and Manasseh stood frozen, their youthful faces cast in shadow by the flickering lamplight. They had never seen their father like this. He was always the vizier, always composed, always strong. Now, he was a grieving son. They wavered, unsure of what to do. Should they remain? Should they speak, comfort him? They had never shed a tear in public, not where anyone could see. To mourn as Hebrews mourned was foreign to them, and yet, tonight, they cried, not for themselves, but for the pain in their father's eyes. Dinah stepped beside them, her expression gentle. She had barely known Joseph, and had never seen his wife, but looking at these boys, she caught a glimpse of her father. The tilt of a brow, the stubborn set of the jaw. Strange, she thought, how Jacob's blood found its way into foreign frames. "Come," she whispered, "give him time." Manasseh clenched his jaw, his fingers curling into fists before he finally nodded. Ephraim exhaled slowly and turned to follow. Together, they walked toward the waiting chariot, their steps slow and reluctant. The weight of the moment had not yet settled when Joseph finally emerged, his face drawn, his eyes red and shadowed. He straightened his shoulders, pressing the sorrow deep into his chest, and addressed them. "He will be embalmed," he stated, his voice quiet but steady. "We will mourn for him here, but I will see to it that we take him to Machpelah, where he belongs." The sons of Jacob nodded, though unease flickered in their eyes. The land of their fathers lay far from Egypt, beyond the wealth and safety of Pharaoh's lands. It was a journey that would not be simple. Without another word, Joseph stepped into the chariot. Ephraim and Manasseh sat stiffly on either side of him, stealing cautious glances his way. The silence stretched between them, heavy and unspoken. They had no words for this kind of loss. They had spent their entire lives in Egypt, raised in palaces and educated among nobles. They had never known what it meant to lose the patriarch of a family, the father of an entire nation. Finally, Ephraim broke the quiet. "Father," he murmured, his voice uncertain, "will Elohim meet him in paradise?" Joseph inhaled sharply, then turned to his son, his expression softening. "Yes, my son," he answered, his voice gentler now. "He is already there." A night of reflection. As the chariot pulled up to the palace, the torches lining the entrance flickered against the polished limestone walls. The great stone columns towered above them, bathed in the warm glow of oil lamps. Even at this late hour, The air was filled with the distant sounds of servants moving about their tasks, the muffled murmurs of royal life continuing. Inside, Asenath was already waiting. She moved quickly as Joseph stepped down from the chariot, her face etched with quiet concern. She was not the most beautiful of Potiphar's daughters, but she was wise and kind, a woman whose strength had anchored him through years of political duty, a devoted mother, a faithful wife. She had been chosen well by Pharaoh, not for her beauty, but for her mind and her steady presence. She embraced him before he could speak, and he sighed into her shoulder, feeling the exhaustion settle deep in his bones. Ephraim and Manasseh quietly left the chariot and headed to their room. Inside, the warmth of a fire flickered against the polished floors, casting long, wavering shadows against the walls. Asenath hurried to remove his heavy outer robe, her hands steady, but her eyes searching his. She did not ask, only waited, patient as always. He sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing a hand across his forehead. "It is done," he murmured. "Father has gone to rest." She sat beside him, silent, waiting for him to continue. Joseph let out a long breath. "Even as vizier, I will need Pharaoh's permission to travel outside of Egypt, to mourn, to bury him in Canaan. But the weight of it all. Asenath, I feel like that young man again, lost in a prison cell, waiting on Elohim to guide my steps." She reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Then you know what to do." He nodded, whispering a quiet prayer into the stillness before allowing sleep to claim him. Fire in the village. Back in the village, the night was far from over. The brothers remained gathered outside Israel's tent, a fire crackling at the center of their circle. They did not speak at first. Each of them was lost in thought, sifting through their father's final words, feeling the weight of what had been spoken over them. Israel had not simply blessed them. He had reshaped the future of their family. Reuben and Simeon, the first and second-born, had been set aside. Ephraim and Manasseh had taken their place. The implications lingered, unspoken but felt. Dinah just sat inside the tent, watching them from the shadows, her heart heavy with unspoken fears. What would become of her now? Israel's grace had been the only thing keeping her from complete exile. If they cast her out, would she plead for Joseph's mercy? He at least knew the wrath of their brothers. He understood how cold and unyielding they could be. Benjamin was the first to break the silence. His voice was uncertain, hesitant. "Do you think Joseph will put us in slavery?" Reuben turned sharply, flashing him a glare. But the fragile quiet had already been broken. Some of them scoffed, shaking their heads in disapproval. Others murmured among themselves. "Joseph would never," one insisted. "He is second to Pharaoh," another countered. "He is more Egyptian than Hebrew now. His children are foreigners. Why would he care about us?" Reuben spat into the fire. "Father has left us no land to claim as our own. All we have is because of Joseph." It was the truth, but it stung. His name was barely a whisper in their father's final blessing. Benjamin, his face tightening, snapped back. "Well, if you had stood up for him, things would be different." A sharp breath. Simeon and Levi moved before the words had fully settled. Their anger immediate, instinctive, a force unchecked by reason. Like two lions responding to a challenge, they lunged at Benjamin, driving him back onto the ground. Gad, the warrior, reacted just as fast. He threw himself between them, catching Levi's wrist before the blow could land. Simeon's fist glanced off Benjamin's shoulder, but before he could strike again, Gad drove his forearm against Simeon's chest, forcing him back. "Enough!" Gad growled, his strength alone holding the three apart. The others scrambled, pulling them apart, shoving them away from one another as the fire crackled violently between them. The air smelled of sweat and dust, their ragged breathing filling the space left by their father's absence. Judah stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Enough." The fire snapped, casting sparks into the tense silence. This is not what our father would have wanted. He looked around the circle, his gaze steady and unwavering. Joseph has never given us reason to fear him. Not then, not now. His words carried the weight of reason, the voice of a man who had learned from failure, who now chose peace over pride. Reuben, still kneeling in the dust, lifted his head. His voice was hoarse. "And yet, our places have been given to his sons." The words hung in the air, and Simeon, bruised and breathless, let out a bitter laugh. "Isn't that the way of it? First, our father loved Joseph above all of us, and now he has given our inheritance to his sons." Levi wiped a streak of blood from his lip, his voice laced with frustration. "We were born of Israel's house, and yet 2 Egyptian boys now stand before us. They hadn't even grown up with them and hadn't shared their suffering, their scars, and yet they stood at the head of the line, as if blood no longer mattered." Judah inhaled sharply but did not speak. The tension simmered. Zebulun, always the diplomat, shook his head. "The blessing is done. Nothing we say can change it." Gad exhaled. "But what does it mean for us?" Naphtali muttered, "It means Reuben and Simeon have lost their birthright. It means Ephraim and Manasseh will now stand as our elders, though they were raised outside our ways." There was silence. It was true, and it stung. Reuben sat back on his heels, shaking his head in disbelief. His voice was raw. "Joseph honors our father. He would not harm us. I know this, but still," he trailed off, his hands pressing against his temples. "What do we say to him? How do we even begin?" Issachar, who had remained quiet, exhaled through his nose, his mind working through the words carefully. "We must acknowledge the wrong we have done. If we do not, it will always remain between us." Reuben swallowed. "Then tell him," he struggled, rubbing a hand down his face, his fingers shaking slightly. "Tell him that father left instructions before he died." Issachar's voice was firmer. "Tell him that we asked for his forgiveness, that he would not hold against us the wrongs we committed against him. Not for our sake, but for the sake of the God of our father." A hush fell over them. Yes, that was the right message. The fire popped, sending a tiny spark into the air. Simeon, glancing around, finally asked, "Who will take the message?" From the entrance of the tent, Dinah stepped forward, her voice quiet but firm. "I will go." Burden of the Blessings. The breakfast chamber was filled with the comforting aromas of warm goat's milk, honeyed bread, and fresh figs. Ephraim and Manasseh sat at the long table, their expressions subdued, their usual eagerness dampened by the weight of the past few days. Asenath, seated across from them, watched them carefully as she placed a piece of fruit on her plate. The boys were not children anymore, teenagers now, standing on the cusp of manhood. But yesterday had changed everything. Ephraim broke the silence first, pushing his food around with his fingers. "I've never seen father like that before." His voice was quiet, hesitant. Manasseh nodded, exhaling. "Neither have I." He looked up, his eyes dark with something unspoken. "He wept, Mother. I didn't know he could." Asenath's heart clenched. They had grown up seeing their father as unshakable, always in control, always composed, the vizier of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. But yesterday, they had not seen the vizier. They had seen a son mourning his father. She reached for her cup, choosing her words carefully. "He loved Israel very much," she said. "Losing him after all these years, it was not the same as when he lost him the first time, but the grief is no less real." Ephraim leaned forward, his fingers drumming against the polished wood. "And then the blessing, before all of them." He glanced at his brother. "That was terrifying." Manasseh frowned. "Did you see the way Uncle Reuben looked at us? And Simeon?" Asenath did not answer right away. She could only imagine it. The tension, the unspoken resentment, the shifting of power. Ephraim and Manasseh had always known they were different. They had grown up in palaces, not tents. They had been taught Egyptian philosophy, politics, and warfare. Yet their father always spoke of Elohim, of the people he came from. But yesterday, everything had changed. Yesterday, in front of all their uncles, their grandfather spoke the words that would forever alter their place in the family. "Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are mine." They had replaced their father's elder brothers. Manasseh's fingers tightened around his cup. "I don't know if I want that." Asenath looked between them, feeling the weight of their uncertainty. "Did you not want the blessings?" she asked carefully. Manasseh looked down, his jaw tense. "I don't know. He hesitated. "We don't even know them. Not really." Ephraim exhaled, shaking his head. "They were always father's brothers. Now we're expected to lead them." He scoffed, but the flicker in his eyes betrayed more doubt than defiance. Asenath reached across the table, resting a hand on Ephraim's. "You are not expected to lead them today," she said gently, "but one day you will stand as elders among them, and you must decide what kind of men you will be." Ephraim and Manasseh exchanged glances. Manasseh exhaled slowly. "They don't trust us." "No," Asenath admitted. "Not yet." Just then, Joseph entered, his robe still dark from the night before, his eyes rimmed with grief, but dry now, as if sorrow had been carefully folded away. The boys straightened instinctively as their father approached, his steps measured, his presence quiet but heavy. He met Asenath's gaze briefly before taking his seat at the head of the table. A servant immediately stepped forward to fill his cup. Joseph took a sip, then glanced at his sons. "You're quiet this morning." Ephraim and Manasseh hesitated. Then Manasseh spoke. "We were talking about yesterday, about grandfather's blessings." Joseph's gaze sharpened, but he remained still. "And?" Manasseh hesitated, then shook his head. "We don't know what it means for us." Ephraim met his father's eyes. They were angry. Joseph studied them for a long moment, setting his cup down carefully. "Yes," he admitted, "some of them were." A moment of silence. "I don't think I want this," Manasseh admitted, his voice quiet but firm. "I don't know how to be one of them." Joseph exhaled, leaning forward. "I understand." He saw the weight pressing down on his sons, the uncertainty, the fear of stepping into a role they had not asked for. Slowly, He reached for his cup again, turning it in his hands. "When I was your age," he said, "I did not know how to be a brother either." Ephraim frowned. "What do you mean?" Joseph met his gaze. "I had dreams," he said, his voice steady. "Dreams that I would one day rise above my brothers. I did not ask for those dreams. I did not want to be set apart. But Elohim had already chosen my path." The room was quiet. Joseph continued, his voice gentle. "When my brothers sold me into slavery, I thought I had lost my place in the family forever." He looked at them both carefully. "But Elohim never lost sight of me, and he has not lost sight of you." Ephraim and Manasseh exchanged glances. Joseph reached for his son's wrist, gripping it gently. "Do not fear this blessing," he said. "It is an honor, not a burden."
You've been listening to the Moses Chronicles Prelude, narrated by M. McIntosh. To explore the full audiobook, purchase it in digital or printed form, or discover companion writings, visit moseschronicles.com. For more sacred fiction, subscribe and journey with us through promises, exile, and deliverance. New chapters are released weekly. Until then, may the quiet still speak.